From kickoff to the full-time whistle.
Don't say the S word. Say the F word. Football.
The S word.
From talkSPORT.
Hello and welcome to the S Word, sponsored by Kalshi. And the dream for the USMNT is over. A thrashing at the hands of the Belgians in Seattle. I'm Will Gavin, and Master Tesfatsion has hot-footed it straight from that game over to Atlanta because he wanted to be that far away from that performance. We'll break it down with Zito Madu, with the great Brad Friedel as well. How much did the politics affect what went on the pitch? And just how much is the legacy of this World Cup going to be a positive for US soccer? Plus, Cristiano Ronaldo leaves the tournament in tears, beaten by that resolute Spanish defence, where we'll have the great Eric Krakauer joining us to look at what it means for Portuguese football as well. All coming up here on the S Word, sponsored by Kalshi.
You know what they say. Come on.
I would drink it like that.
I did notice the...
Olympic medals.
I wish you had Olympic medals around your neck. Instead, you are wearing your USMNT kit. Still loud, still proud, still out.
I'm a purple medal if you want.
I think maybe do put it on. It might make you feel better about yourself. Just like a little comfort blanket around your neck for the show today. Yes, the USMNT are out of the World Cup after it turned out they were a bit of a layup for Belgium. That is how it sounded last night, live on talkSPORT. Spain, their late winner for Mikel Merino, putting them through to the next stage of the World Cup. They will meet Belgium in the quarterfinals, not the USMNT, after a 4-1 defeat up in the Pacific Northwest saw the US crash out of their own tournament. Come on then, Master. The floor is yours, sir. You were there in Seattle, Tacoma yesterday. You experienced this live and in person. How did it go from the highs of the last 4 games to the lows of yesterday?
This one was tough. This one was tough to swallow. Due to the simple fact that all of my biggest fears with this team all transpired within the first 10 minutes of this match. All the sentiments of this generation of the U.S. men's national team being soft and trepidatious and making mental errors and killing themselves and not giving it their all for the crest. You saw that unfold within the first 10-15 minutes. How slow they looked, how lack of intensity they had, the inability to we've seen the pressing, we've seen the aggressiveness all tournament long. And in that first 10-15 minutes, there is none of that. There's no intensity. There's no belief. There's no understanding of what is at stake. At least the performance did not dictate that or show that. And I think that was the most difficult thing to swallow. And you're going through the first 15 minutes of my own mind, and I'm just completely stunned at the fact that this team, knowing everything that's on the line, in the best venue you could possibly ask for, to have a home crowd with that home advantage behind you, galvanizing you, ready to go from the jump of this match. And you're giving them absolutely nothing to get behind. And you concede on an early goal. The concerns I had with Matt Freese going into this tournament unfortunately unfolded in the most embarrassing way possible with the third goal that was conceded. That was an absolute backbreaker. The concerns I had of 38-year-old Tim Ream starting for this team at center back, unfortunately, played a huge role in the 2 goals that they conceded as well. And Pochettino was just left without having any sort of answers for it. And I don't even know if I can really blame him for this. At a certain point, the energy, the intensity, that's on the players. And the players didn't show up. And that for me is just hard. That's hard to accept. That as great as this tournament has been to this point, that this is the way it ends. It is a very difficult pill to swallow.
Yeah, Matt Freese, the irony that you're there so close to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the home of the Atlanta Falcons, going full Young Wei Koo, kicking the ground on that goal. And listen, the first and third goals, both of them are goals that simply can't happen at this sort of level.
The second one too.
Like, arguably the second one too, Tim Ream beaten in the air when he really shouldn't be, but
like it transcends technical analysis. It transcends tactical studies. Rudy Garcia came out and put on a bit of a masterclass in the first half through some real surprises at the USMNT. I think arguably we're the first team to really have both the quality and also the tactical nous to set up to nullify what the USMNT do well and to be able to exploit what maybe they don't do so well. But for all of that to happen and to give up those goals in what is the biggest game of these players' lives, like the level of disappointment, even at 2-1, where you've conceded so quickly after scoring the first, and then you've had half time to reset. Pochettino has looked like he's made some changes. You're not creating chances necessarily, but you're getting a bit more possession, a bit more field position. You are getting those opportunities are starting to open up, and then, I mean, you use the phrase, right, backbreaker. Just absolutely killer goal to concede.
I'm still trying to understand what he was thinking, because at a certain point he's coming out and he's coming out of the box, and again, great instincts coming out of the box. I'm thinking, clear this thing, either header it out of bounds or just kick it as far as you can. He takes a cheeky touch, and all of a sudden he thinks he's the white Vizinha all of a sudden, and at that point, again, mission accomplished. Just clear the ball. Clear the ball. That's all you have to do. Clear the ball. And again, the cheekiness continued, and maybe the confidence became irrational, as Americans tend to be sometimes, and it led to the third goal. Like that was the true sentiment that we were getting our asses handed to us, unfortunately, and there was no way around it. Belgium kicked our asses. They kicked our asses, and we did not do anything. This was a clear definition. This is quintessential belt to ass moment that the United States men's national team just dealt with, and again, part of that too was just killing themselves. There was the margin for error was small as it was, and you were not going to beat a team in the round of 16 to try and advance in the quarterfinals doing just dumb things like that. You just are not. I don't care who you are.
Listen, it means the USMNT are now out at the round of 16 for its fourth successive World Cup. Obviously missed out in 2018 entirely, but 4 in a row that this is the stage that the USMNT get to. You've got over that hump of winning a knockout stage game. That's the first one since 2022, but 11 shots allowed in the first half compared with 10 shots in total in their first halves in the 4 previous games. What are you putting it down to yesterday? Were you outclassed by just coming up against an opposition who for the first time in this tournament truly had some ability and didn't really turn up to play football themselves until the last 10 minutes of their game with Senegal, but really set up in this game so much better than we've seen them do at any other stage in this tournament? But how much are you putting on the players? How much are you putting on mentality? How much are you putting on how Poch sets them up?
The players didn't show up, Will. It's very obvious. The players didn't show up. The players didn't show up. They didn't show up with the same fight. They didn't show up with the same hunger that I've seen time and time again with all the matches that I've seen from this U.S. men's national team throughout this tournament and being in person. They didn't show up for this fight. They didn't. For whatever reason that is, whether it was the belief of coming back to Seattle after that amazing experience that I was there as well for USA Australia, knowing you were going to have that crowd behind you, whether it was Balogun's red card being delayed and he was being available, the overwhelming belief that the fans had that they were going to get this one over the line, overcoming what happened in 2014, losing to Belgium, this Belgium side when they were at the peak of this golden generation, and viewing them now as, in the twilights of this generation, there was a level of pretentiousness, Will, I feel like, that everyone just assumed that we were going to advance. And I think that trickled down to the players, and they just decided not to show up and that this thing would be handed to them. And they got humbled very, very quickly. And these were the performances leading up to this World Cup that created the pessimism that American fans that follow this team had, because they were due for this. And we thought we had worked through this through the group stage, even beating Bosnia-Herzegovina, going down a man and not having the most perfect game plan for that, and things not going your way, being able to handle that. They got punched in the mouth first in this match. And even though they responded, it was the continuation of being behind the 8 ball from this team. And they could never dig themselves out of that early hole of just not being ready for this match as soon as that whistle blew. And that is something that, again, as much as I've enjoyed this run, I've enjoyed this tournament, we're gonna smash rating records, I'm sure, once again, from the viewership that existed for USA Belgium. But I am left with the same taste in my mouth that unfortunately I am time and time again as a U.S. men's national team fan, where this is always where the bus stops.
On that point, we've got loads of people getting in touch on the YouTube chat on talkSPORT, the S Word powered by talkSPORT, and on the main talkSPORT channel. Micah, I never get it right, and then he corrects me every time. Says, morning, gents. It just wasn't our day. Lackluster performance from our crew, but I'm still so optimistic about soccer in the US. Our watch party last night had close to 1,000 people in rural West Virginia. That's what you want to hear. That's the stuff where you're like, is it going to hit the middle of America? Is it going to hit those areas where you don't necessarily think of as being the big football and soccer fan bases, the Brooklyns and the East Coast and LA, etc. Yeah, there we go. They're just here for the John Denver. Paul says Pulisic, it could be loaned out to the MLS before he even turns 30. Dude couldn't beat a parking cone yesterday. Our friend Patio Joe gets in touch saying, tough loss last night. Give credit to Belgium. US picked the worst time to play their worst game, but they went about as far as I thought they would. Still lots of World Cup left to enjoy. Love that positivity. And here's the kind of point I wanted to get on. Rohan says, frauds eliminated last night, referring to both games. How lovely. The sport ain't tainted after all. And this is how I think the perception is going to be about last night. I think the feeling from the world is going to be the USMNT losing was for the good of football. And I think that's so unfair on the players. I think it's so unfair on Fowler and Balogun in particular, who has handled this whole situation with the utmost grace and class. Rudy Garcia, speaking in his press conference afterwards, revealed that Balogun came over and spoke to him after the game to personally apologise is the wrong word, but to address the situation with him directly. You know, these are
a video of it too.
Yeah, and this is a group of players who, prior to last night, had played their hearts out, had put on some of the best performances we've ever seen from the US men's national team. They'd really brought a nation together and don't deserve to be tarnished with the brush that they're now being tarnished with. But what it does show you is it does show you that a billionaire supposed leader of the free world can cozy up to FIFA as much as he wants, and football is still 22 people on a pitch. It's still about 22 blokes going head to head. It's still about what happens between those white lines in those 90 minutes, and that you actually, as much as FIFA wants to corrupt football, as much as it seems like it wants to, stuff is still going to be decided by the football itself. For every issue that FIFA has had for this tournament, for everything from referees not getting into the country, to Iranians being denied visas, to half of Africa not being able to come and support their teams, all of these things which should have ruined this World Cup, the football has been brilliant throughout. I think my concern with the USMNT is that you become slight darlings, like maybe not as much as Mexico and the rest of the world, but like people were like, they wanted to see the USMNT do well. That seemed to flip over the course of 2 days with the narrative that was created by Donald Trump and by the administration getting involved in FIFA. What I wanted to see from the USMNT last night, Master, with all that in mind, you're used to being the villains on the international stage. You're used to being the team everyone roots against. And I saw none of that in the performance last night. I saw none of that kind of like us versus them. We're going to prove that it doesn't matter that people think that we cheated. We're going to go out and we're going to put on a performance anyway. And instead, I don't know. They disintegrated.
This isn't the player group to want to be villains. They want to be like so bad. And in a situation where they're called to be villains, they showed up as cowards. And so that's unfortunately the reality of this situation. Is they weren't willing to meet up to the moment. They weren't. And you know, if there are people around the world, which absolutely they are. I've seen it on social media. I've seen it in my text messages I've seen it in our work group chats that are reveling in the fact that the U.S. is out as a result of what's
land transpired. Of the freeze and all that.
I can't fault them. Yeah, was that Ollie that came up with that one?
Yeah.
He's been killing that. He's been killing that one to death.
Yeah. Just so you know, Ollie Klink, occasional presenter on this show, resent me all of his messages from the group chat last night just to remind me of all the great puns that he made, so I could reuse them on air if I wanted to. Thanks, Ollie, you big nerd. And listen, the sad thing for me is this is a diverse team presenting a new version of the US men's national team who are liked by people, and yet this is going to be that kind of overriding memory that no matter how good the vibes got, Trump got involved, and that's tarnished them and tarnished this whole thing. And I just think it's a real shame. But I know a man who has some strong thoughts on this, and a man I'm sure has some strong thoughts on the USMNT in general in the World Cup. Is friend of the show, personal friend of yours. I'd like to think we're getting to that stage, Zito, the amount we've talked on air at this point. But at some point, you and me are getting together at a watch party. We're having a few drinks. We're having a good time. That's what I want to see. Zito Madu joining the show and looking.
Thank you. I mean, it is a wonderful
smile
day.
His face than hearing a close personal friend.
Zito, are you in mourning this morning? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really great. I think it's a lovely day outside. I think, everyone's having a lovely time right now. But yeah, I watched it. Well, I watched part of the game and then I ended up seeing it later that night. And it was so fantastic. I think, like, Master, what you were saying about how they weren't able to show up as the villains. I think you're right, but also you're asking that team to flip a switch to an identity that they didn't have, right? Like Gavin, you were saying, like they were loved. This was like the kind of like sweetheart, or like people wanted them to win. So to suddenly go from that and being like 2 days, you not have to become the villains is like a total identity change. I don't think. I think the pressure of all of that was, you could see it on them. It's not even that they played and lost. It's like they didn't show up at all. But I think that's so much of, you're asking me to be a complete different team than I was for the whole tournament.
A completely different team in which these players are not built to be. In terms of that fight, that's not them. That is always, if anything, that has always been their Achilles heel, is in those moments where we needed to see that fight, we needed to see that vow, we needed to see that, that dark muse energy, I guess, as Kobe Bryant once would call it. They couldn't change. If anything, I saw more from Greg Berhalter than I saw from anyone else on that team when he came and got subbed on, and that speaks volumes in terms of the performance and the fight that we saw from this team that just did not show up.
Yeah. I also just don't understand why, and this is, I think, the political stuff that we were talking about. I don't understand why you would put that pressure on that team, right? Like, I think Pochettino understands what that team is. I think the team, like the players themselves, understand who they are. When all of this was happening, I think when it first started happening, I was like, oh, like, why would you do that to this team, right? Like, now you've made them the villains when they don't want to be. I think it's different when the team is like, yeah, we're the villains, we're going to embrace this. But to sort of make the story of the U.S. men's national team, like Gavin, you said, is like, it's this diverse team that's kind of presenting this new image of U.S. soccer, or at least like in the men's side, that's so different from the previous one. And is like trying to be as inclusive as possible, and is trying to like, bring as many people as possible. And like, you're seeing the consequences of this all throughout the country, right? Like you're seeing it in West Virginia, you're seeing it in like Ohio, all of these things, and everyone's in a good mood. And then suddenly you're just like, let's go back to the most like rah-rah American. Let's laugh at everyone. Let's like bend the rules. And, I think there's a difference between bending the rules and then doing this so blatantly that your president is in a press conference talking about how he did it and how he's going to brag about it and how they're going to talk about it at the UN. I think that's much different in terms, like beyond making the U.S. putting the pressure on the U.S. men's national team. I think it also like invigorated Belgium, who hadn't actually been good this whole tournament. But then they're like, we're not just playing for us, we're playing for the soul of football. And then you end up running into a buzzsaw of like players who are actually better than you and who are motivated to actually embarrass you now.
It's fascinating to me, particularly because in what has been an inherently political World Cup, which has been unavoidable, regardless of how the players and the people on the pitch feel about it, Mauricio Pochettino has actually done a really good job of keeping that out of the men's national team, of making it, that's been a FIFA issue, that's been a Trump issue, that's been whatever that whole situation is. It's never necessarily directly linked to the actual national team and how they're performing. And after making every effort to make sure politics didn't become part of it, Donald Trump sticks his oar in and the co-hosts go from being, everyone's darlings to suddenly a team that people want to see lose. And I don't want that. I want hosts to go further in tournament. If we weren't the team facing Mexico, I'd love Mexico to be in the next round because they've been brilliant and a joy to watch. I slightly torn loyalties on that one, but it's the same here. Like for the show, for the sake of the tournament, for everything else, the US men's national team still being in this tournament would be for the good of the tournament, the good of the country, and for the good of us. And yet, I totally get why some people are pleased and banging the drum and delighted this morning that you're out.
Yeah, I mean, like you were right that Pochettino has done really well of keeping the politics outside of the team, right? And I think what you were saying earlier about how like FIFA's tried so hard, or like FIFA's corruption has kind of like tried so hard to ruin the tournament, but the games have been good. Like I've always made this argument that like FIFA wants the games to succeed because that's also how they get away with everything else. And what they're, it's like if the World Cup is great, you don't really talk too much about everything else, right? I think we saw this in Qatar, where there was a lot of conversation before the game started. Then as soon as everyone realized that the World Cup games were great, it was like, well, let's not really worry about this at this moment, etc. But I think what FIFA has always been really good at doing is like once the games start, we're not talking about anything else. Like nothing else can encroach on this. We just let the games and the players kind of like remind people how beautiful this game is, right? So like you've seen it here. It's like no one really talks about the ICE situation anymore. No one really talks about the visa stuff as much. Even when the situation with Vazina came out, like his mom couldn't be there, like the State Department went really fast in bringing her in so everyone could stop talking about it. And so you see this way that FIFA kind of like creates this bubble around the actual field so that people can have those positive feelings associated with the game. I think what this did was to infringe on that bubble in a very direct way, right? Like, I don't think we've had a World Cup, at least in my lifetime, where right in the middle of the tournament, in the knockout stages, it's just like, here's the politics in the most brazen way, right? It's like, here's the politics, here's the president of the host country, here's him bragging about, this corruption, here's FIFA struggling to even deal with it. And like the other nations, the UEFA, Bosnia, all these nations are now like filing an appeal or like putting out statements talking about how corrupt all of this is. I think that is counter to how FIFA likes to do things, which is once the games start, no one say anything, no one say or do anything. And, because of that, now you have all this host country out, and now all three host countries are out, right? So I think everyone wanted the U.S. to do well because it's always nice when the host country is represented really well. I think it was nice that this team looks so different from the previous teams. I think it was nice that they were like playing and giving people hope and like building a soccer culture around here. And it sucks that the lasting effect of that is like a lot of distaste, and not just not just in some American fans, but like the whole world just like sees it as like this beacon of corruption now, right? Balogun doesn't deserve to be the poster boy for Article 27. It should have been Ronaldo, but like now it's Balogun, and now it's Balogun's like forever linked with Donald Trump.
Let me ask you, Zito, and I guess that's the same question extends to Master a little bit here as well. Just before we let you go, the USMNT are out, so who are you rooting for the rest of this competition?
I think Master has seen this from the games that we've like seen each other at. But I am a Frenchman that was born in Marseille.
So you're a bandwagon front jumper. I see. I get it.
I've always supported the French.
Who's the favourite? Right, I'm going to find some. Can I do one of those family tree DNA tests to see how French I am?
I just want to say, as a huge fan of Marseille, as a man who was born on the Mediterranean Sea and floated to the old port, I just have to support my people.
I get that. I think Master's just anyone but England at this point.
I am going to. You have never seen a black man row as much as I'm about to row for this. I'll tell you that much. I'm about to be in that month. I'm about to be like Jameis Winston. All you gonna hear is, ooh, 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 ooh.
Have you?
That is literally going to be the entire time.
Around here, we only use the F word.
talkSPORT presents
The S word. No cuss words here. Just 2 hours of full-on football dialogue.
every day.
talkSPORT presents
The S Word.
I'm delighted to say that joining us, USMNT legends and member of the talkSPORT team for this World Cup, the great Brad Friedel is here. Brad, how are you, sir?
Very good. How are you guys? Don't shake your head.
Days.
Come on. I'll talk you through it.
We've seen better days, Brad.
Talk him off the ledge, Brad. Come on.
Well, I mean, we spoke before the World Cup. I mean, where I'm at is I wanted the game I was worried about the most was Paraguay. We played very well. I just wanted to get through the group. I wanted to finish in first or second, so we had a favorable draw. And I told you guys on this program is once we face one of the big boys, the stars are going to have to align for us to win, and that's where we're at. We have some very good players, but we've had very good players over all of our tournaments. We don't have to go through them, but with Richards and Robinson and McKinney Adams, et cetera, et cetera. One thing that that we still need to grow on as a nation, and that's just to become a soccer nation, is the mentality of the sport. I always worry when we play against teams that have pace on the wings, and they started Luca Bacchio, which was the perfect player to start. I thought that they might play Doku as well, because when you take away Freeman's pace and you take away Robinson's pace and pin them back, I think Christian found it really difficult, and Dest found it really difficult, because they're now only 1v1 and not having overlapping players. And we don't have a ball playing midfield that's going to outball people. And so when you take away our pace and our forward progress, then we're going to have difficult times against the better teams. But I don't think that's a shame. I don't think it's the program's bad. I don't think that all the chips are down. We're still growing, and it's going to take a long time to catch up to these countries, especially when we don't get all the best athletes, when they're not born in the U.S. and always wanting to be soccer players. We don't have big media rights deals in the league, but everything's growing. I don't mean to sound doom and gloom. From 94 to today, it's come leaps and bounds, and it's going to continue to do so. So I still think there's a lot of positive things to look at.
I love that what you talked about in terms of Luca Bacchio, the speed that they had, the pace, especially taking advantage of those wingers, because it just felt like, from my vantage point, seeing Jedi and Tim Ring having to deal with being overwhelmed at a lot of times, and having numeral advantages that Belgium would have, either having 3v2s or 2v1s, where Jedi's kind of out on his own, and having to draw Christian back to help defend that. And it felt like our midfield was just stretched as a result of that.
It would have happened, and against Spain, it would have been worse. Against France, it would have been worse. Against England, it would have been worse. It doesn't actually. Belgium's a really good team. They've been a little bit sleepy in this tournament. It didn't help that we gave them the added impetus to really stick it to us, which they did. You could see that it meant something to them with their celebration after Lukaku's goal, and also with their FA's post right after the match. I thought Balogun was very classy, very respectful when he went up and spoke to Garcia afterwards. But I just wish people would just put it into perspective what it is. You have to put the development of soccer in the United States in two categories: infrastructure and then the development of players. From 94 to today, infrastructure is if it was a 0.5 or a 1 on a scale of 1 to 10 back in 94, it's a 7, 8, or 9 now, depending on which state you're going into. And with regards to the developmental players, we're very similar to what we were back in 2002. We produced some really good players. They still need to go over to Europe to become better players. But we have to work on that. But it's the mentality of the player, the mentality, the mindset that we have to grow on. And we still have a long, long way to go. Knockout football against the top 10 rated teams in the world is really difficult, and we're not there yet.
We obviously have to ask you about what happened with Matt Fries yesterday, going full Young Wei Koo on his attempt to clear that ball out. The problem with the goalkeeper, as always, it's like a lineman, to go back to another NFL analogy. It's one of those things where until you do your job badly, nobody necessarily notices, unless you're making spectacular saves, etc. But how does he handle that? Okay. How much did that knock the game over? How do you handle that as a goalkeeper? What did you make of the mistake?
Well, I think the game was knocked over the second that they scored, 61 seconds after we scored the equalizer. I think you could just see it in the play. They're like, wow, we're really up against it. I'll break down the goal. I thought his starting position was very, very good. I think his initial movement was very good. I think his first touch was very good. Where he made his mistake, he got caught in two minds. Should I just clear the ball, or should I take another touch and pass it? He ended up doing a little bit of both. His foot stuck in the ground. I think it was De Ketelaar, correct, who poked it away from him. And the rest was history. And then Tim Ream got caught, backpedaling and couldn't open up his foot to stop the goal. It's a mistake, but I really think people need to put it into perspective. He played 5 games in a World Cup and made one mistake.
So you described this tournament as a success for the U.S. men's national team. Now what's next? Pochettino's contract expires. Do you bring him back?
I do, personally, because I think the biggest problem with U.S. development is the mentality of the player, not the technical abilities of the player. not and not what our match schedule, not, it's a mentality of the players. And I think if he were here for another 4 years, he could help a lot inside the MLS clubs, inside USL clubs, and what it really means. And then maybe we could start making a step into the crazy world of US youth soccer and stuff like that, because he's from the outside view. He'll come in and he'll say exactly what he thinks, and they'll have no problem making hard decisions. So me personally, I'd like to see him stay from that point of view, because I think he'd be a person that can really help with the mentality of the US player.
So much of the conversation, and this is also kind of looking forward, going into these tournaments, is about the star man, Christian Pulisic. He's the face of US soccer. He's Captain America. He's the star boy. He's everything else. And yet 7 appearances over 2 World Cups, comes off injured in 3 of them, just the 1 goal to his name in that time. Do you look to move off building the team around him going forwards? Do you have to look at an option B? Because he's 31 the next World Cup. It might be his last one based on his injury history. It feels like it's a career that's missed the mark.
I mean, building off of him, that's a question for the next head coach, or Mauricio, if he's the coach. What I would say, just in a realist point of view, is he had 45 minutes of really good football in this tournament, and that was the first 45 against Paraguay. I thought he looked magnificent, but that's not enough from your star players. You look around all the top players. I mean, look at the Golden Boot race right now. Messi's name's up there, Haaland's name's up there, Kane's name's up there, Mbappe's name's up there, Dembele's name's up there, and it's just on and on and on and on. All the big boys have come to play in this World Cup, and they're showing it, and we needed Christian to perform. Unfortunately, he missed a couple games due to injury, but when he did play the Bosnia game, that wasn't up to a standard that you would need, and yesterday for sure. But I also stand by the fact that he's not one that can open up a game just on his own. He needs the help of Robinson on the left-hand side. And I'll stand by my point. When people play with quick wingers against us, they're going to isolate our wingers, and it was Dest and Christian into 1v1 situations, also them having to go up against physical players, and it's hard.
Maybe it's fortunate we didn't have to see you against Lamine Yamal then. Brad Friedel, wonderful stuff from you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, as always.
Brad, I will be rolling.
Keep smiling. Keep smiling. Come on.
Listen, I will. When Norway beats England, I will be rolling my boat.
Is that
gently down?
Actually, you think that's going to happen?
I'm praying for it, Brad. As I was praying for Mexico, and I'll pray for whoever else England faces.
I'll tell all my English pal.
Brad, it's coming home, baby. It's coming home. Don't you listen to a word.
Oh, don't say that song. I don't mind. I don't mind.
They're going home.
You know, I would like England to win it now. That's no problem. But don't sing that song. Don't sing it.
I'll sing that song all day long when we bring the trophy home, my friend.
Oh, here we go. No.
Yeah, baby. God, we won 1 knockout match in spectacular fashion, and suddenly we feel ourselves like we're the US. Wonderful stuff.
He wanted a smile. Brad wanted a smile. He got a smile.
And he got smiles, didn't he? He got smiles in their abundance.
All right.
From kickoff to the full-time whistle,
talkSPORT presents
the S word.
Around here, we only use the F word.
talkSPORT presents
the S word.
Of course, it's been all about the USMNT so far, crashing out of the tournament at the round of 16. We'll continue that conversation with Brad Friedel coming up shortly, but there were really 2 huge stories coming out of last night. One of the host nations going out, but also Cristiano Ronaldo playing his final ever minutes of World Cup football as Portugal lost 1-0 to a late Mikel Merino Spain winner. And I'm delighted to say, let's get straight to the guest here, because I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say. The brilliant Eric Krakauer is with us here on the S Word, friend of the show. A man who knows what it's like for people to get up in his mentions thanks to us on the Cristiano Ronaldo stuff. Eric, thoughts, feelings after this Portugal team with so much promise goes out of the round of 16?
First of all, glad to be back on with you fellas. Master, nice to chat with you. Listen, when you've resigned yourself to your fate long before you meet it, it's a lot easier to digest it. So while I was disappointed, mostly angry yesterday, I'm well over what happened.
Just like that. I mean, that is hard for me to believe because, I mean, there was expectations for this Portuguese side to be a dark horse team, a team that can win it all. And, we'll get to Cristiano Ronaldo here soon. But, bro, that midfield was atrocious. Bruno Fernandes and Vitinha, as much as I expected from them in this tournament, did not show up. And the goal that was conceded, you literally have Bruno crying to the officials on the foul, and Spain takes advantage of that moment and finds the only decisive goal, the differential in that match. Like, again, we'll get to Cristiano Ronaldo here in a minute, but there's no way you can be satisfied by the way the midfield performed.
No, I'm not. I didn't say I'm satisfied, but the thing is, I was on this show and plenty of other shows before the World Cup talking about how the expectations that people had imposed on Portugal or projected onto Portugal were vastly inflated. And that I knew that this was a team that had lots of issues that it needed to correct were they to have a very good campaign. But when you have a Roberto Martinez at the helm, I'm sorry, nice guy, a gentleman, a good ambassador for the country, it was just obvious that things weren't going to work out, if that makes any sense.
You can say all that lovely stuff about him. Roberto Martinez, you can say, a nice ambassador, a nice chap, everything else. Managerially, he's an absolute charlatan. He won an FA Cup in 2013. He did nothing at Everton. I think he finished fifth in the first season with them, but then tailed off horrendously after that. He wasted a golden generation with Belgium. He's now wasted Cristiano Ronaldo's last chance at a World Cup, whether or not you want to debate that he should be doing it. He won a Nations League. People on the show feel very differently about that tournament. I'll tell you that for nothing. He wasn't strong enough in saying we needed to make changes, and he wasn't strong enough with Cristiano Ronaldo, and eventually I think that is what's cost this team.
Yes, well, I would begin by saying that he didn't know the changes that he had to make, and he was also weak with Cristiano Ronaldo. In fact, I will go further than that. Apart from Cristiano Ronaldo, nobody has done more to taint his legacy with the Portuguese national team than Roberto Martinez. It was the equivalent. I've been thinking about analogies here. It is the equivalent of having a friend who has an addiction, okay, let's say gambling, for example, and instead of saying, hey, bud, you got to get off of that, okay, you give them a phone with an app, a gambling app, okay? Or if somebody has a drinking addiction, you hand them a glass of wine. That is what Roberto Martinez did to Cristiano Ronaldo. We all know about Cristiano Ronaldo's ego, the fact that he thinks that he can still be the key piece to this Portuguese national team. It behooved Roberto Martinez to say, Cristiano, you can be a piece of this team, but you are no longer the focal point. You are no longer the star man. But beyond that, he didn't, and to Master's point, he didn't have a plan to get the most out of Vitinha and Bruno Fernandes and João Neves. In fact, it is a travesty that he took one of the most intrepid central midfielders, forward-thinking central midfielders, and turned him into a sideways passing merchant. And I'm talking about Vitinha. This isn't just about Vitinha. This is about what Roberto Martinez did to Vitinha.
I get all that. And obviously, I'm not going to disagree with anything you just said about Roberto Martinez. But to say that he didn't make changes when the reason why they beat Croatia was the changes that he made for once, I think in this World Cup, whether it was his last one that he had, no longer have to deal with the Federation, whatever the case may be, he did sub off Cristiano Ronaldo, he subbed off Vitinha, he subbed off Bruno Fernandes, and they found a way to win against Croatia, a very tough Croatian side. So while I am not absolving Roberto Martinez at all from the issues that are resolved here, I just don't think that it completely absolves Bruno Fernandes and Vitinha either. Because I've seen Bruno Fernandes with Ruben Amorim serve as a holding midfielder in Manchester United, playing out of position and still leading the Premier League in chances created. Where was that Bruno Where was that Vitinha that we've seen at PSG that has made difference time and time again? That again, the same team was the same team that faced Spain in the Nations League final and showed up and put up a tremendous performance. I did not see that from these two, and I think they're getting off way too easy off this World Cup because of Cristiano Ronaldo and because of Roberto Martinez conversations. These two did not show up.
I'm not suggesting that there isn't some truth to that, but I would argue that Portugal beats Croatia in spite of Roberto Martinez and not because of Roberto Martinez. Okay? Roberto Martinez in that game, when Croatia go a goal up, panics and makes 4 substitutions in one fell swoop. He takes out Vitinha and Bruno Fernandes among the 4. I'm not saying that that was the wrong decision, but he loses the midfield, and he was very fortunate that he gets a corner, and there's a penalty called in favor of Portugal, which I thought was a little soft. It's a foul, but it's not one that gets called. After Cristiano Ronaldo scores that goal, Portugal have a vacuum in the middle of the field. And if it weren't for an offside decision against Croatia, Croatia are back in front. So now Roberto Martinez is forced into another substitution. He has 1 left. He needs a midfielder. He wants to bring in Ruben Neves. I don't even think he's the best option in that situation. The game is thrown into chaos by his 4 substitutions. He looks at Rafael Leão, he looks at Gonçalo Ramos, who he'd put on to play alongside Cristiano, not in for Cristiano. He also sees Cristiano Ronaldo, and he has to make a very difficult choice about whom to pull off. I don't think he ever planned on pulling Cristiano, but he realized that he needed a little bit of width, and the only person who was creating, despite the defensive liabilities, was Rafael Leão. Gonçalo Ramos has just been put into the game, so he has to take off Cristiano Ronaldo. That was not planned. That is not good coaching. That is reactionary. And it paid off in the end with a little bit of luck. So everything that happened, okay, that was good was in spite of Roberto Martinez, and everything that happened that was bad was because of Roberto Martinez, and I'll go to my grave saying that. But that does not say that there isn't culpability in those players that you mentioned, Master. But I will add this. In a collective, it is very hard even for good players to come through when the whole thing is just disjointed, dysfunctional, and that's what it was. Okay, Vitinha and Bruno Fernandes, despite all the issues that Manchester United had runners ahead of them, okay? Had people who could press. Look at PSG. What Neves and Vitinha do has a lot to do with the front 3, not only what they do with the ball, but also the positions that they can occupy without them because of the pressing that happens in front of them. So this is a collective issue.
On to the Cristiano Ronaldo of it, because there's a lot you said there that I agree with. I think like the fact that Gonçalo Ramos doesn't get a single minute in this game, despite the fact that over the last 2 World Cups, he's got 4 goals in 184 non-penalty goals in 187 minutes of football. Cristiano Ronaldo, in 8 games worth of football, has 2 open play goals in that time. Like, he is meant to be the future of this team. He is meant to be what it's building around. And people always kind of wonder, when you get into the Messi, the Ronaldo, all of that stuff, which can feel boring at times, people want to know why people don't like Cristiano Ronaldo. Why, even though he's clearly a brilliant footballer, a winner, a guy who's done some things we've never seen anyone else do on the pitch, I look at his behaviour yesterday. I look at him in his post-game press conference saying, I'll wake up tomorrow in the same mood I did today. I did my best. We won 3 titles with Portugal. Before me, it was 0 titles. I can only be happy. It's never about how he's affecting the team going forward. It's never about how he's affected the team in that moment. He's a guy who then talked about winning the Euros in 2016. He considers the same as winning a World Cup. You can ask anyone who's never won the World Cup but has won the Euros if they consider it the same, and I promise you they don't. And I would love England to have won a Euros at some point in the last 60 years, don't get me wrong by any stretch of the imagination, but the World Cup is something else, and it just feels like he always wants to diminish the stuff that's not what he's doing and he's achieving. And he's become almost Trumpian in his behaviour when he's talking about this stuff, where, I don't know, he either believes it himself or he just knows he's got the backing of the world so much of his stands that he can just get away with saying what he wants, and people are just going to go, oh, brilliant, legend, love him. But he held this team hostage over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with that. And listen, Will, you know exactly how I feel about Cristiano Ronaldo, okay? This is a guy who carried the Portuguese national team for over a decade, who didn't always have the supporting cast that he needed. And I think that plays into those statistics that you mentioned about how many goals he scored in the tournament, in the knockout stages, it didn't all come down to him. In fact, a lot of it came down to bad coaching and to a supporting cast that didn't have the quality that this one does. But let's talk about 2022 and let's talk about this tournament. It was already clear in 2022 that he shouldn't be starting, that Gonçalo Ramos should. We saw what happened against Switzerland, how impactful he was scoring a hat-trick. The problem was that afterwards against Morocco, Gonçalo Ramos and the fact that Fernando Santos dropped Cristiano Ronaldo, that became the discussion rather than a poor game plan with many of the same fragilities that we saw in this tournament impacting them against a well-organized and deadly Morocco in transition. But in this tournament, to your point, he absolutely held the team hostage, and so too did Roberto Martinez. But to Master's point, it wasn't only about Cristiano Ronaldo. All those other pieces didn't work as well. For example, I believe that if you are going to insist on keeping Cristiano Ronaldo on the team, you need to devise a blueprint that is going to help him have an impact on the match. There wasn't enough verticality from anybody else. Okay, if there wasn't enough crossing in opportune moments. I'm not saying that you have to do what Mexico did at the end of the game against England, where you're just bombarding the box, but you need to provide more service that unfortunately didn't come. When people say that he didn't have enough touches in the penalty box, partly that happened because there was a lack of service and other players who could facilitate his game. Also his positioning against Spain, when he didn't see the ball, he went looking for it, which annoyed the hell out of me. But ultimately, you're right, Will. This has everything to do with the fact that he shouldn't have been on the field for 90 minutes, that Gonçalo Ramos deserved the opportunity to be one of the star men. And if not Gonçalo Ramos, play João Felix in a false nine and have runners ahead of him that he can help stretch the game with. So yes, it's been a disaster. His legacy has been tainted, and he is a narcissist. We have always known that he is a narcissist, but you could put up with that when he was putting up the goals as well. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case in this tournament. But this comes down more than Cristiano Ronaldo. This comes down to Roberto Martinez and the fact that he was and has been completely inept as the national team coach of Portugal.
Thank you for joining us today on the S Word, sponsored by Kalshi, the USMNT. We hardly knew ye. We will move on. We'll look at the last two round of 16 games. Tomorrow we're live from 8 a.m. Eastern on YouTube, and we're available on demand absolutely everywhere you can get your podcast on Spotify, your video podcast on Apple Podcasts. We're on Tubi, on the Fox Soccer One app. We'll be looking back on Argentina, Egypt. We'll be looking back on Switzerland, Colombia as well, and we'll be looking forward to the last 8, to the quarterfinals of this 2026 World Cup, all coming up for you tomorrow on the S Word, sponsored by Kalshi.
talkSPORT presents
The S Word.
Listen again and subscribe,
Wherever you get your podcasts.
and on the S Word YouTube channel.